To start section 5, and we're going to start with the first section, or chapter 5, section 1, and this is going to be on communication. So now we're starting to get into the interaction part of the human interaction class, and communication is the way that we process information. So the definition of communication is the process of conveying feelings, attitudes, beliefs, and ideas between individuals, either verbally or non-verbally, in such a way that the intended message is received. And that last part of that statement is the key component that often gets and causes problems for people. And that is that the intended message is received. And we all know that things can often go wrong in communication, and the intended message is not received the way that it was planned for. So let's talk about some of the problems that can happen. So when two people are communicating, there's actually 6 different possible messages that can go through. So now all of this is just regarding 2 people. When you add a group or a family or more than 2 people, it's going to get even more complicated, and you'll be able to really see why communication can be so difficult for some people. So first you have what you mean to say. So for example, if you came into class one day and I saw you and you just didn't look yourself, and I was kind of worried that maybe something was wrong, I might say, "Oh my goodness, you look awful today. Is everything okay?" Now, what I mean to say is that I'm concerned about you. I'm worried you don't look yourself. But then there's what you actually say. So my word choice may not have been best there because, saying you look awful, if maybe you're having a bad day, maybe you overslept or something, then when you hear what I actually said, then it comes to number 3, what the other person hears you saying. So even though I'm trying, my meaning is that I want to convey that I'm concerned about you, what I actually say based on my word choice is, that you look awful. And so now it goes through your personal filter. So what you actually hear me say is, "Oh my God, you look horrible. Why are you even here today?" Because you're already feeling self-conscious. Then you've got what that other person thinks they hear. So again, that's taking in that filter. When I'm thinking of communication, I always like to think of us all as walking around with one of those picnic covers. So if you've ever gone to a picnic and you see those little screen tents that go over food to protect it from the bugs getting in, I kind of like to think of us all walking around with one of those over us. And when we communicate with other people, the communication's going through that screened filter, and then we get what's left. And that screened filter is all of our personal experiences. So the mood we're in that day, how we're feeling, our relationship with the person, if we're on good terms, if we're arguing, everything that's going on in our life is that screened filter. So then we get to what the other person says about what you said. So this kind of gets then to the game of telephone. When you start sharing information with other people, things always get twisted around or turned around a little bit. So maybe you go to your best friend and you say, "Oh my gosh, my professor came in this morning to class and told me I look hideous, and why did I even bother coming to school today? And I should be locked in my bed where I belong." Now, is that what I said? No. Is that, how maybe they felt I was saying because of their own filters? Possibly. And then, it also sounds a little more dramatic if you add that little turn. And then you get to that what you think the other person said about what you said. So this is, the rumor mill starting, and how it gets twisted and turned over time. And then it comes back to you, "Oh my God, my friend's in your class and she said that you came in and said she looks disgusting, and why did she bother coming to school? I can't believe you'd say that." So when we add different people into the mix and different components, it gets, misconstrued even more. In all communication, there's 3 processes, and we're talking all communication: verbal, nonverbal, written, and there is the sender of the message, so the person that is looking to convey a message to somebody else. You've got the receiver of the message, and that's the person that's going to accept what the sender's sending. And then the content of the message. What is it you're trying to say? And then there is, all communication goes through this 7-step process. You've got the idea, what it is you want to convey to the person. So maybe you want to ask, I have a more detailed example here that you can read through, but I'm going to give a simple one since I'm not there to answer questions or whatever as I go through it. So maybe you have the idea that you would like to go to lunch with your best friend. So that's your idea. So then you need to encode the message. So how are you going to send it? What words are you going to use? What tone? You're trying to, convey the idea. So maybe you send your best friend, you decide you're going to send them a text message. Well, that goes to the transmission. So you decide you're going to be cute and send like an emoji of like a frozen beverage and a hot dog because you want to go to the beach and get a hot dog at the beach stand and a smoothie or whatever. So then how are you going to send it? So you decide you're going to send it through text message. It can be face-to-face communication. It can be a letter, an email, phone conversation, whatever. That's the transmission part. Well, then the receiver has to open that. So maybe your friend opens it and she sees the picture of the frozen drink and the hot dog, and she thinks you're telling her that that's what you're doing. So maybe she writes, "Oh, cool. I'm jealous. I'm, sitting in my office at work while you're living the life," or whatever. So the receiver is having to decode that message, is trying to have to make sense of what was sent to them to make sure that they're understanding what the sender meant to say. So then you're going to go for understanding. So maybe I say, "Oh, I'm jealous, I'm sitting in an office while you're living the life." Well, then you come back for feedback. So then I realize what she's thinking and I say, "Oh, no, I'm asking you after work. You want to join me for a hot dog and a smoothie?" "Oh, okay, I misunderstood." So it's that back and forth. It's that providing feedback, deciding how you're going to encode the message. And I'm sure all of you have stories and examples of where something has gotten misunderstood in the encoding message. So, for example, I'm one of those where I'll write my husband like a mushy text message, and I'll, spell it all out there. "I love you. Thank you for everything you do for us," all this mushy stuff. And he'll write back, "Love you too." Like, LUVYA 2. And I would be like, "Really? I just sit here and pour my whole heart out to you and I get like 4 letters back." And like the one time this legitimately happened and I was all, like all night I'm thinking, that was a real jerk response. Well, then later he tells me, "Sorry, I was working and I couldn't really stop to respond the way I wanted to, but I wanted you to know I had gotten it. So just, don't mind my short response." And then it made sense. But in that, until I got that feedback, that clarification, there was like a misunderstanding that here I'm going to, spill my heart out to you and you're going to barely, text me the way you would your buddy that you know from school, Okay, so that's all for that section. Now I'm going to go on to the second section. And when we're communicating, so there's different styles in responding. And now we can be a mixture of these, but as I go through them, you're going to find that 1 or 2 tend to stand out to you as being the way that you tend to respond to people. So the first one's evaluative or judging. And this is where you tend to assess the whole situation and make judgments on it as to whether or not the person is right or wrong. Now, this can be helpful if you're the type of person that like wants feedback and you want somebody that's going to just tell you like it is, and they're gonna, they're not gonna tell you what you want to hear. Can you do this to Lorelai? They're not going to tell you what you want to hear. They're going to tell you what they think is the truth, what you need to hear, what's reality. And depending on what the situation is, this can be good or it can be bad. So if you, and a lot of this can be done in how you word things. So instead of sounding like you're criticizing the person, like, you shouldn't have done that, that was a stupid response. Instead of saying it that way, maybe using I statements. So, if I was you, I probably would have said this way. So instead of it comes across, instead of you trying to tell them what to do, you're just sharing with them what you would have done. The next one's advising. So if you are the friend that everyone comes to for advice, feedback, because they know you're going to listen and offer support, then that is the advising one. Now, the thing with this is that if the person's looking just for someone to vent to, someone to just unload, the advising response may not be well received because they're not looking for anyone to fix it. They're not looking for someone to tell them what they should do. They just want someone to hear them out. Then the advising person can come across as being kind of pushy or offering unsolicited advice. The next one is the interpretive, and this is where the receiver tries to tell the sender what his or her problem really is. So this is where, and sometimes this can be good because it may give the sender a different perspective than they have previously seen. So if, say, you came and you're like, I'm so angry at my mother because she did, I can't even think of what might be something you would be frustrated with, but you're angry so you're complaining to your friend that you're angry at your mother about one thing. But she knows that the two of you had a big fight last weekend and you guys really haven't been talking all week. Then your friend might say, I don't really think you're upset about that. I think you're still upset about last weekend. Now, some people may appreciate that response because it's making them look at the bigger picture and the whole situation where they may not be able to see it themselves because they're in the midst of it. Other times it may be perceived as you trying to tell the person what they're thinking and feeling. And that may be off-putting for some people or in some situations. The next one's the supportive one. This is the one that is the that shoulder to cry on, that person that's going to listen. They're not going to try to diminish your feelings. They're not going to try to tell you that you shouldn't feel someplace. They're just going to offer comfort and support. For the supportive one, though, it's best received when it's authentic and genuine, when you genuinely care about the person and want to be there for them and want to be supportive for them. That's when it's going to be received well. If you're kind of doing that fake support, like, I'm here if you need me, just give me a call, but you really don't want them to call you, then it's not going to be received as well. The next one is the questioning, and this is when the receiver of the conversation, of the discussion, is looking for more information. They want the full picture. They're not going to offer you advice, suggestions, until they get the whole big picture. So they tend to ask open-ended questions that leave you providing more details, more information, instead of close-ended questions. Yes, and then the next one, is understanding. And the understanding response style is where you want to make sure that you're going to seek more information to make sure that you are fully understanding what is being said. And if you look at the bottom here, there's this quote that best summarizes the understanding listener. And it's seek first to understand and then to be understood. And this is really important, especially when you're talking about active or empathetic listening. And a lot of people struggle with this. So a lot of us, when we're communicating with somebody, especially if we're having a debate or an argument or a heated discussion, is that we're so quick to be thinking about what we're going to say, what our rebuttal is going to be, what our response is going to be, that we don't fully listen to what the other person's saying. And even more importantly, we don't put ourselves in the other person's shoes. So this is one thing I try to do a lot, because it doesn't mean that I'm necessarily going to change my mind or change the way I think about a situation, but it changes how I receive it when I'm able to put myself in their shoes and see it from their perspective. So if I'm able to sit back and say, okay, even though I don't agree with that, but I also haven't lived the life they've lived, I haven't had the experiences they've experienced. If I did live that, maybe I would see it from their point of view as well. Then it at least keeps things respectable, and you're able to empathize with the other person and understand where they're coming from. And this is something that, especially if it's something you feel strongly about or you're passionate about, it's difficult to do and to offer somebody. So empathetic listening or active listening is a skill that takes time and patience, and it's something I really, really recommend all of you focusing on and trying to do more often, especially if there's somebody in your life that's important to you, that you care about, that you tend to like argue with a lot or get into disagreements a lot. Try the next time you start having a disagreement with that person, try taking a step back and trying to see it from their point of view. It's not easy to do, especially if you're used to being a right fighter and trying to be the one that's right and prove the other person wrong. It can be hard to take a step back, but by doing so, it changes the dynamic of the relationship so much, and it improves things so deeply. So I highly recommend that be done. Okay, so that's for a different day. Okay, so we are done with the Topic 5 lecture. Please remember that we will not be having a Zoom meeting on Friday. So for this week, you will just be watching this video, reviewing the notes for yourself, doing the homework assignment, and I believe there is a reading assignment this topic as well, so taking care of that. And then I will be meeting you guys next week on Zoom, not this Friday, the 16th. So you guys have a wonderful 2 weeks, and I will see you very soon. Have a great night.